I thought the most staggering thing that happened in the last week was when Donald Trump told Kristen Welker that he didn't believe in the due process rights of Americans. He didn't believe in the Fifth Amendment. He didn't think that was his obligation as the primary person responsible for defending, preserving, and protecting our democracy and the Constitution. He said, "Oh, I don't know. Do I have to really do that? Is that so? That sounds like a lot of trials. Sounds difficult." I thought that was the most staggering thing and an impeachable moment until I heard Stephen Miller in the back lawn of the White House tell reporters, obviously based on a discussion he's had with Donald Trump, that they are considering, get ready, suspending an aspect of the Constitution. I said they were going to try to suspend the Constitution. Now they're threatening to suspend the writ of habeas corpus, which is the only thing in the Constitution that you can point to if anybody ever drags you off to a prison or a detention center to get before a federal judge, the writ of habeas corpus. And they're considering suspending it because of this phony declaration of war by Donald Trump, this proclamation of war, that we're at war with Venezuela and that he's going to have to suspend the Constitution as a result. We have a word for that. It's called martial law. And if we're at that moment, forget the slippery slope. A slope implies that there's a degree of distance that has to be traveled. We're there already. And we talk about it and shine a light on it right here on Legal AF, the podcast. Take a listen.
So Popok, I know we're going to talk about like what happened in Judge Boasberg's court involving the class action where Boasberg wants to have discovery regarding, what's going on in El Salvador. We're going to talk about Judge Zinnes, of course, what's going on there where the Trump regime invoked the state secrets doctrine. Southern District of Texas, a Trump appointed judge, ruling the Alien Enemies Act unlawful. Judge Hellerstein, Southern District of New York, Clinton appointee, Alien Enemies Act unlawful. Judge in Colorado, judge in Maryland. They're all, but at the heart of it is this issue, right, Pope? It's due process. And we're here, I think, sooner than many people expected that this is the showdown. We're here.
When we last saw Donald Trump in the White House before this first 110 days, we know towards the end he was considering the suspension of the Constitution, the declaration of martial law, the seizing of voting equipment. They had an executive order already drafted. It's part of the evidence in the Jan 6th and the interference case against Donald Trump and in the Jan 6th committee's report. That was being pushed at the time by Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani and Patrick Byrne from Overstock.com and others. So Donald Trump has an allergic reaction to the Constitution and his requirements. And when he doesn't like what it says, he ignores it. When he doesn't like what the Supreme Court says, he either ignores it or he twists their words out of all recognition. He carries around a very strange version of the Constitution in his back pocket. It only has two provisions. It's got Article 2, which is the power of the presidency, and the Second Amendment. Everything else is cut out like one of these paper doll things. And when you combine that with having people, and I agree with you that Stephen Miller, and I've been calling it out, you've been calling it out since the administration started. Stephen Miller has become the only one, apparently, according to other reporting, that has walk-in rights, meaning he can barge into the White House, the Oval Office, anytime he wants and sit down with the president. He's the last word, literally. He stays in the room till everybody is left. He's Donald Trump's Svengali. He's the puppet master. It's not Elon Musk as the domestic policy president or even foreign policy president. It is Stephen Miller as Donald Trump's brain at this point. He's not a lawyer. Although he was the architect for the original depraved immigration policy the first time around in the first administration, the reason kids were separated from their parents and put in cages, see Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is also the architect of the whole use of the Alien Enemies Act, again, a non-lawyer, playing one on TV or playing one in the White House. He's the reason that the Alien Enemies Act was invoked. He's the reason that Donald Trump came up with a phony proclamation that we are at war with Venezuela. And we have enemy combatants in our midst in the form of Tren de Aragua. That's all a lie. It's been blown open as a lie in various things that you and I have learned and shared with our audience the last 2 weeks, including internal memos from the intelligence community of Donald Trump, which says that's a lie. And then you have what we always feared. You and I actually talked about it 3 weeks ago. I said at one point, and I said it in a hot take about a week ago, that we are dangerously close to Donald Trump declaring the suspension of the Constitution and declaring martial law. And he's effectively done that. This is not even a slippery slope, because there's no slope between what Stephen Miller just did, just blithely in the gravel driveway of the White House to reporters, and announcing that they're considering suspending the quote unquote privilege of writ of habeas corpus. That is it's actually a requirement, even though the word privilege was used. That's really an old timey way of saying it's a due process right of people, as the Supreme Court has interpreted. We're going to suspend it. Now, the only way you could ever suspend it, and it's only been suspended 4 times in our history, and always during a time of war. And that is if we have an invasion, back to predatory invasion, or a warlike event going on. So we have to get rid of the niceties of our constitutional due process. Habeas corpus, for those, I don't want to just use these terms of art without explaining them. The writ of habeas corpus is the very foundation of everything that is right in our Constitution about due process rights and the right of somebody to be taken before a federal judge and not left to rot in a dank, dark prison like the Count of Monte Cristo, or like Abrego Garcia in a gulag overseas. The reason we keep talking in all these cases about due process and notice, about writs of habeas corpus, which is the way that the Supreme Court in their 6-3 decision in their 6-3 decision in the JGG case, as they ruled, they said, you want to send people to a gulag, you can do whatever you want after you give them due process through a writ of habeas corpus and get that person before a federal judge. And then that federal judge can make a decision whether the Alien Enemies Act has been properly invoked and whether due process has been properly given to this particular person. They don't want to hear that. They didn't hear it, and they don't want to hear it. And so Stephen Miller's saying, here's an idea. We'll just be consistent and press a losing hand. The losing hand that they're pressing is that they don't have to give constitutional due process, and they can summarily remove and deport people, and that could be you and me and everybody else, to prisons if they, quote unquote, have a predatory invasion or incursion or warlike event. And they can also, that's the losing hand, they can also suspend the writ of habeas corpus. And this, I have to tell you, even that staggering comment must have put a chill down the spine of many members of the United States Supreme Court, not just the moderates or the liberals on the court, including somebody like Chief Justice Roberts. Because to say that we're going to trump up a wag the dog moment and create a phony war in order to do things like roll up the Constitution and put it away for a period of time. And so that's why I said Ben, it's not a slippery slope. Slippery slope implies we got to go a certain distance to get to that. We are here, ladies and gentlemen. The fact that they're even considering that means the attorneys general, the ACLUs, the public interest groups, the Midas Mighty, the legal aid efforts, we got to be ready to file in court at the appropriate moment, haven't drafted already, the lawsuit and the injunction to stop the suspension of our Constitution and the removal of the writ of habeas corpus right. I never thought in my lifetime, in anyone's lifetime, that we'd ever be talking about that. This is not the Civil War. This is not World War II. This is not the Philippines. This is 2025 America, a democracy. The only thing that happened in November that should have changed is who's occupying the White House, not the very government and the bedrock of our constitutional republic.
So we're seeing Supreme Court justices at various events now vocalizing these things, right? I mean, it's mostly the liberal members, right? We've saw 2 weeks ago, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson at an event in Puerto Rico. Justice Sotomayor spoke this past week, of all places, at an American Bar Association event, which I thought was notable as well, because Donald Trump has banned Department of Justice lawyers from acknowledging the existence of the American Bar Association, which they've labeled a bad actor, a leftist, radical, liberal group, the American Bar Association, which is anything but that helps promulgate ethics rules and, has always been viewed as bipartisan. I've never been viewed as a political thing at all. It simply is an organization that stands for due process, and then they have subject matter areas of expertise. Anyway, Justice Sotomayor was speaking at the American Bar Association, and she had a message basically to lawyers, like, you can't capitulate right now. And if you're weak and you can't handle this, don't become lawyers. We need courageous lawyers, not weak lawyers. And then she talked about the threat that was taking place. And then you also had Chief Justice Roberts speaking in Buffalo, where he mentioned as well, and he said it kind of in this very sheepish way, though, also, like, well, I think that, when it comes to, challenges to judges, it shouldn't be impeachment. You you go through the process. It was like maybe a little bit of a stronger defense right there, right now, Justice Roberts. But, it's still jarring, I guess, that he's even saying anything publicly, because you don't really hear Supreme Court justices having, addressing issues, right now, while they're not, unless they're actually on the bench.
Can I just say one thing on your Roberts thing?
Mm-hmm.
He said, we were all waiting for him to say something. He said there are some excesses and abuses that the court can weigh in on. I'm like, what are you effing talking about? You and I called it, he created this Frankenstein monster, and he's been complaining about it since January, even before Donald Trump took office, about the abuse on the judiciary. In his State of the Judiciary address on Jan 1, you did hot takes on it, I did hot takes on it. And so, but he released the Kraken. He created an unstoppable, unless the federal courts don't do their job, which they are, thank God, in the courts that they've been filed in. But he alone is the author. It's not just the Roberts Court. He wrote the Colorado insurrectionists, barring them from the ballot decision, in which they said, we're not going to bar Donald Trump as an insurrectionist from a ballot. That wasn't just a majority decision. That was written by Roberts. He wrote the immunity decision. He assigned the other major decisions that empowered Donald Trump, he assigned to somebody else. So this is on him. And for him to sit there in his little suit and tie was really galling to me. To talk about, as you said, the cheetah's eating your face, or Frankenstein's ravaging the countryside. Yeah, you created Frankenstein. And now we're trying to figure out, to mix metaphors, how to shove him back in a bottle.
Let me just show people the way he sounded, just so everybody can see, like, what I thought was just extra weak here. I think we've got this clip. Let's play it.
What do you think of these calls for impeachment of judges based on the decisions that they've made?
Well, I've already spoken to that. And, impeachment is not how you register disagreement with decisions.
That's what you're for, right? That's what you're there for.
That's what we're there for. Yeah.
Because I want you to contrast that with Congressmember Menendez Jr., who was in Newark when Mayor Baraka was arrested by, maybe it was ICE. It was probably more likely these private prison officials who are contracted out by ICE from the Geo Group, arresting mayors from the city who are there in their official capacity as a mayor. The mayor has the right to say, why are you opening up detention centers in my city? Let me take a look at it. I'm the mayor of this city. I want to make sure you're not torturing people, that there's compliance with health codes. I'm the mayor of the city. He shows up, they arrest him. And, on the one hand, you have, Justice Roberts, well, I just think that maybe we should do this. And then contrast it to what went down when you had private security guards, and I've seen some people saying, how do we know that these people aren't even like the same people who were there on January 6th? like, how do you know these aren't the Proud Boys?
Yes,
who are these, right. Who are these people, like, beating up, assaulting members of Congress and arresting a mayor from Newark? And then, so contrast what Roberts said. Here's Menendez Jr. Let's play it.
Along with 3 members of Congress. It was an act of intimidation. It was an act of intimidation, not just to the mayor, not just to us, but to everyone watching. We know what ICE has been doing in our communities. We know that the president lied and this administration lies every day. when they're saying they're going after criminals. It is not true. They feel no weight of the law. They feel no restraint on what they should be doing. And that was shown in broad daylight today when they not just arrested the mayor of Newark, but when they put their hands on 2 members of Congress who are standing behind me. How is this acceptable to anyone in this country? How is this acceptable?
And that's an Alina Habba, and that's an Alina Habba special, because she is the acting interim U.S. attorney for New Jersey, and she said she's going to go after political rivals of Donald Trump. The mayor of Newark has long been touted as a potential presidential candidate, and he was just doing what the other Congress people were doing, which was shining a light on these ICE detentions in their community. And as you said, either some rent-a-cop or somebody else arrested them. And I give a lot of credit to Menendez. He comes to, it's a very difficult place for him to be in, because he's got his father who was going to jail and for 17 years for a bribery scandal, who talked about the weaponization of the Department of Justice. But you see it, there's just this complete, utter, authentic passion with Menendez Jr. about this particular issue. You could see he was raw in the moment, but that's what we need. We need to bring it now. Due process is the very foundation of our constitutional republic, without which we have no constitutional republic, certainly when it comes to criminal justice. If you believe in the rule of law, you believe in our due process rights and First Amendment rights of people, then you've chosen the right place to hang out. On Legal AF, the YouTube channel, and Legal AF, the podcast. We do the podcast every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Midas Touch Network. Pick us up on audio podcast platforms as well. Because we have so many people to do both, we have rocketed up to the top 13 in the world as a podcast. That's humbling, makes us strive and work harder at the intersection of law and politics. So we don't have an outside marketing group. You are our outside marketing group. We have no outside investors. Take that clip, ask people to join our journey as part of their own. And come on over to Legal AF, the YouTube channel, Legal AF MTN, that I curate there. We've already grown to about 640,000 subscribers in only about 7 months. That's all because of you. And that allows me to bring on new voices, new content, new interviews, new podcasts, all there. We've added about 6 new contributors just in the last 2 weeks because of the growth of the channel, and that's on you. We also have a Legal AF Substack that you might also be interested in. Come on over to Legal AF, the Substack. So until my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.